Halo, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, Bapak Ibu semuanya. Dear all teacher, good afternoon. How are you this afternoon, Bapak Ibu? I can see that there are already 100 teachers are here. Thank you so much for coming and joining us on our webinar today entitled Gauging Students' Speaking and Writing Abilities, presented by Atlaz and Intan Pariwara. I am Nadia Isnan. I will be your moderator for today's webinar. Okay, so before we start, I would like to take a look at our Zoom, and I want to see how many of you who have opened up your camera. I can see Ibu Pinky, Pak Dedi, Ibu Vero. Okay, thank you so much for coming also for Ibu Siti and Ibu from Kendari. Are you using some kind of, the animation thing? That's good. Yeah, it looks cool on you, Bapak Ibu. And I also can see Ibu Yanti from Jawa Timur. Okay. Oh yeah. So anyway, I also would like to greet all of teachers from East Java who have joined us today. Yeah, because one of our first speaker, is from Jawa Timur nih ya, from Kediri if I'm not mistaken. So yes, he also shared this information to, I guess, other teachers in Jawa Timur ya, Bapak. Thank you so much. All right, so before we start our session, I would like to uh, share some important notes for today's event. So the present list will be given at the end of the session, Bapak Ibu. So do not worry if you stay here until the end of the session. You will get the link to, to have to be filled. All right, and then at the end, At the end of the present list, there will be some two question anyway, about the keywords. So these important keywords will be given by our speaker today, right? So the certificate is worth to our credit, and then it will be sent to your email if you have filled in the present list. Okay, so make sure that you have filled in the present list that will be given at the end of the session. All right. Okay, so during the presentation and discussion today, please use the chat feature if you have any technical issues, or yeah, if you want to give some general comments about our webinar today. All right. Okay, so our today's webinar entitled Gauging Student Speaking and Writing Abilities will be presented by our two speaker. Okay, but before we go on to that one, I would like yeah, to ask you, Bapak Ibu, do you have any idea what gauging is? Okay, because I have done my research on this one. Right? So gauging based on Cambridge Dictionary is actually the meaning is to calculate, right? And then it also means to judge and yeah, to make a judgment about something. So in this case, right, in this session, we are going to find out techniques in gauging our students' ability in productive skill. Okay, so we are going to discuss productive skill, speaking and also writing. Okay, and the discussion will be delivered by our speaker. I would like to call our first speaker. We have Bapak Kusen. Hello, Bapak. How are you this afternoon, sir?
Hello, I'm okay. Definitely okay. Thank you, Miss
Uh,
Nadia, for
oh,
inviting me.
all right, Bapak. So, are you now in Kediri, Bapak?
Yes, sure. I'm still at school
Ah,
right now.
oh, you're still at school?
Yeah.
Wow, okay. Very dedicated. Thank you so much, Bapak. All right, so we're going to have you on our first session, and then after that, okay, after the first session, we're going to have the second session, and it will be led by Mr. Kevin. Mr. Kevin, are you here? All right, I know that Mr. Kevin hasn't become the okay the co-host. So yeah, how are you, Mr. Kevin?
I'm great. Thanks for asking. Now I'm a host too. Yay.
All right, so I guess you're so ready for today's webinar, right?
Yes, I'm so excited to see everybody here. And it seems like we're getting more and more teachers coming. That's good.
Yes. Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Kevin. We're going to see you on our second session, right? Okay. All right. So, Bapak Ibu, I also would like to greet some teachers who have joined us on YouTube. I can see that there's Ibu Ekbal, Mr. Ekbal, Ibu Sasi, and so on. Okay. So, for those who have joined us on YouTube, you also can participate by giving some comments, right? Or you want to give some emoji or something. Yes, because we see you. All right. No worry. Okay. All right. So, if you want to share if you want to share our moment today on Instagram, do not forget to also tag us at hi.atlas so that later more teachers out there will be inspired by your activity today, right? Okay, I guess now we are going to go to our first session. And then I would like to welcome our first speaker. I will call again Bapak Muhammad Kusen M.Pd. So he is actually the Ketua MGMP Bahasa Inggris SMA for Jawa Timur gitu. Oke. Now without any further ado, I would like to call him Bapak. I guess it is time for you. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Miss Nadia, for giving me this very valuable occasion.
Thank you, Bapak. You're
All
welcome.
right, let me take my turn. Is that okay? I have to share screen right now. Is that visible already?
Yes, sir. We can see that.
All right. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And
Oh,
good afternoon, everyone. It is an honor for me, Muhammad Hussein, famous as Mr. Chen, the chairperson of English Teacher Association in East Java, to be invited in this very lovely occasion. So to begin with this, basically invited in this session, I'm not going to try to talk about something that will be huge for you to think about, but I believe that these kinds of things basically happens and you experience in most occasion you have as the English teachers. So for this occasion, as what I already presented right here on your screen that you can see, now I'm going to talk about classroom-based activities and assessment on speaking skill. Again, everyone, talking about speaking skill. So we believe that the nature of the speaking skill, we basically talk about the production of spoken language. And in that way, it will deal with linguistic aspect, cognitive, social, and cultural aspect. So to be sure, I'm not going to talk about something dealing with this theory, but this is only as a reminder for all of us that we are talking about speaking in this sense, that as a reminder for all of us that we are talking about the production of speaking language the production of the spoken language, in that we have to include linguistic aspect, cognitive processes, social element, and also cultural aspect. So then, if we have already remembered these kinds of aspects, so that will be easy for us later on to talking about these kinds of things. So let us try to unpack one by one the linguistic competence. We surely believe that in any ways, in any occasion, we are talking about speaking aspect or speaking skill, we include or we activate the linguistic competence. In that way, linguistic competence refers to the mastery of language elements such as vocabulary, grammar, pronunciation, and also discourse structures. And we also cannot separate that during the speaking process, we also activate the cognitive processes. In that way, we also try to recall any kinds of memories we have, to invite back again any kinds of knowledge we have. And we also try to structure what we are going to talk and how we have to try to manage this kinds of talk into meaningful units. So that's why in that kind of process of speaking skill, we also activate cognitive processes. Everyone, we also cannot ignore that during the speaking processes, we also activate social and instructional competence. We believe that during the speaking process, we need other people. We need to have the one we are speaking to. In that way, we need to interact with that kind of people. And this kinds of competence is really, really important as well. Just try to imagine once that you are talking to other people, meanwhile that you do not have enough competence in your social aspect. So that will be very, very difficult as well. So that's why the component of speaking will also need to have, or we need to activate social and instructional competence. And also the understanding of our socio-cultural factors will also the dominant factors that make our speaking also successful. So that's why we need to refer to cultural norms, values, and social identities. Everyone, somehow there are still, okay, these kinds of big words is going to be visible to us to discuss further. In that way, basically some words I have already mentioned before, like fluency, accuracy, pronunciation, and vocabulary as linguistic competence. That we also have cognitive processing, and also instruction, and also social skill will also be something very important. Discourse competence, pragmatic competence, social linguistic competence, and also cultural awareness. Everyone, by trying to remember back again to these kinds of conception, so then as the English teacher, we can remember basically those kinds of aspects can also be planned, can also be taught to our students, and how are ways to train or to make other people, to make our student can have the better mastery of speaking skill, among other things. So we are going to have this kind of, probably this is not going to be the fixed activities. I believe that there are still some more. I believe that English teachers here as the participants in these kinds of webinars know better than me, but I believe that this kinds of thing will also strengthen our understanding back again. First, it's quite common to us talking about role playing. Once that we are teaching to our students, we are giving them the occasion of how they have the process of the practice, how they can train themselves in speaking English by giving them the role of the specific scenario. So I believe that students will get the benefit of how they can learn English. And to be sure, what we need to do regarding to this kinds of role playing is that we need to make sure that what is actually the objective of our teaching and what are the role plays that the student should have in that kind of session. So that is the way for role playing. Check again. Right here we have the assessment processes by trying to provide the students about feedback. Check. After the role play, provide feedback on language use, pronunciation, and fluency. All right, let's check. What is the second one? The possibility to have once we are teaching English to our student on speaking skill. Second of all, this is quite common to us. Now, even our students are also promoted to have that kind of session of the debate, namely NSDC, National School Debating Championship. And we here are in the process of that, promoting our student international, and probably some provinces have already successfully conducted the selection process. And here, including East Java, we have already done that kind of selection process. And we have already got the very brilliant students. And I believe that we also believe that our students are basically very, very, very good at their speaking. So debate is going to be such kind of good option to make our student even better to train themselves in speaking. So I'm not going to talk about this in a very detailed way, because when we talk about this kinds of session of the debate, so that will be very longer explanation. And I believe that 1 hour is not enough, or even a day workshop is not enough talking about debate. But I believe that some of you have already been familiar with this kind of session of the debate. All right, so let me go again. So this is quite common rather than talking about debate. So this is quite what is it, casual occasion rather than the debate, because in the debate probably students are going to be given such kind of very very interesting topic. In that they are going to be very, very serious, and they need to stand, or they need to stick into one position of the side. Meanwhile, in the discussion, that the situation is more casual, is more familiar. So the students are interacting with each other into such kind of familiar situation rather than in a debate. This is open-ended conversation on various topics where students share their opinion, experiences, and ideas. Check. How is then basically we are going to have this here as a teacher? Check that during the discussion, we need to we need to assign the student for what? First, moderator, note taker, timekeeper, and make sure that the discussion will run very smoothly, and that there should be structured and productive discussion. Next, again, I believe that this kind of thing is a very old method, but still is quite interesting. That's called information gap activities. So probably you may provide your students such kind of pieces of information, and that one to the other, the complete information probably is placed into one, but some other point is missing. But meanwhile, the other student will also have that kind of part that the first student do not have any. So this is called by information gap activities. So what is then the role of the teacher right here? Make sure that you circulate to instruction are using the target language, that your students are using the target language, and over the help if needed. So make sure probably your student needs to have such kind of vocabulary needed during their talk, probably that you may assess them. So that is quite interesting idea to talk about speaking activities. And we still in the session that story is part of interesting process of a learning a language. So we have here in a speaking activities is called by storytelling. And even that in quite some time or quite often that you probably in your region conducted storytelling competition. So this is quite a good activities for your student to practice and master their spoken English. So in that way, later on, we need to act out as a teacher that know something about art, about culture, and more things about how to behave and how to express into the certain role when we talk about storytelling. Next again, is quite important also, is quite important as well, talking about presentation. When we ask the student about presentation is quite common, especially dealing ones that we are talking about monologue tag. So in our class processes, we often ask our student to do presentation. So in this way, presentation is good option for us to make sure that our student also develop how their mastery in speaking skill. But remember again, the role of the role of us as a teacher, make sure that the student presentation should be structured. Start from the very beginning, called introduction, and what is the main concepts and called body, and then what is then the end of that kind of talk called by conclusion. So we need to train them. Probably for some students it's quite easy, but for some others are not. So that's why the selection of the activities in teaching speaking are pleased and are welcome to you as a teachers to choose. Next again, we are talking about interview activities. Probably this is going to be something is quite challenging when they have to pretend themselves as interviewer and interviewee. But again, this is going to be also good for the students in that they need to train themselves of how to make the good and strong point of questions and how they have to elaborate further based on the given answer from the interviewee. So that's a very good point in interview activities. Well, everyone, in speaking, we cannot really escape from what is so-called as rubric. So that's why, since that in speaking skill, we need to judge and we need to justify whether that our student basically are successful to the certain target or the certain objective of learning or not. So basically, we need to have what is so-called as rubric. So that's why it's quite common to us as the English teacher to be very familiar and how to make this into our processes of teaching, habitual teaching and learning in our process. So let's see. Probably it's not something difficult for you, but theoretically we need to know that what is actually the way how to do it. Designing the rubric is that that we basically have enough time to manage ourselves to design the rubric. So probably the question should not be answered directly, but think about yourself. I myself believe that designing rubric is quite complicated. So that's why designing rubric, if you become the English teacher, you yourself, what you can do is that trying to have a look toward the available rubric and try to adjust them into your meaningful unit of learning, depending on how you are going to make that kind of target of success. So that's why in designing the rubric, so you may come into available rubric and you modify them, or you just adopt it 100%, or how is basically based on your own wisdom. So the most important aspect is that dealing with the rubric, that you need to be convinced of yourself that you are going to take this stand using this rubric into the way that you are going to judge whether your students are successful during the process of learning or not. But first of all, again, we need to have the first stage called by designing the rubric. If you yourself cannot design yourself, try to adapt, try to adopt if this is quite complicated again. If you are not able to adapt, you may adopt. But we strongly suggest that you adapt that. But somehow right now, that's quite easier for you. Just try to work with artificial intelligence, just trying to confirm that, and you are trying to ask, provide me a rubric for speaking, blah, 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 and you are going to be provided with a rubric. Somehow, when it is not matched with your demand, with your target, or with your objective of learning, again, try to adjust them. Next, number 2. I don't really think that we introduce the rubric to the students. For all of us, probably for some, yes, I can guarantee that you are doing so. But for most cases, it's okay, especially dealing with the speaking classes, introducing the rubric to students is going to take some time. So that's why, but somehow this is basically very important, at least that to let them know that basically they are going to be scored based on these kinds of aspects. Theoretically, that this is going to be, okay, prerequisite, if I have to say. So you have to try to introduce your students to what the rubric that you are going to use during the class processes. Next again. Whether or not you are going to have enough time to do so. Training student on self-assessment. Again, probably Miss Nadia, when you are not going to come into direct classroom practices, probably you may think, okay, that should be done on that way. But probably teachers practically doing this way will take your time. But then again, at least you need to take sample. You need to take sample from your students. In that way, your student basically know what is actually meant by the certain element in the rubric you are going to use. So train your student on self-assessment. Okay, this is my speaking process and this is the rubric, and in what position am I? So you need to make sure that one of the students or two of the students know exactly that they can also have their self-assessment. And this is going to be your task, conducting the assessment. So you are going to assess your student based on the available rubric. Okay, so this is basically the routine that you have already done in your classroom, just trying to take the score. But then again, later, as I'm going to talk even further later on after this, whether that we are going to use analytic scoring or whether we are going to use holistic scoring. But what I'm going to try to demonstrate to you is on analytic scoring rubric. Okay, don't forget, during the last process of your teaching, your rubric that you are the rubric that you have already implemented into your classroom. So please don't forget to give your student about feedback. Feedback is very important. So that's why the available rubric is going to be used as the parameter of how you judge your student's ability. In that way, when the student's performances do not match to what the criteria in the rubric, so you yourself later on should also try to make adjustments and also make such kind of evaluation, and your evaluation should also be given back again to your student. That's a feedback. And also, then again, you need to also invite your student to have reflection and also revising. So you as a teacher also need to have the reflection whether or not your rubric is basically successful when it is implemented with your student. Probably the certain school can adapt the certain rubric, but probably it will not work toward your context. So that's why you need to have your self-reflection toward the rubric that you have already used, and also the possibility that you need to have the revision toward your rubric. And also engaging student in peer assessment. So as I told you last time in the beginning, we also have the possibility of training student on self-assessment. And in that way, you can also train your student to apply what is so-called as peer assessment. So once a student perform, for example, the other student observe, and they are going to judge whether their friend have already been successful or not. So students evaluating students, so it's called by peer assessment. And then again, aligning rubric with their instructional goals. This is going to be such kind of very important aspect as well in the rubric selection process. Okay, so that is the thing talking about rubric. How much time do I still have, Miss Nadia? Hello, Miss Nadia.
Hello, hello.
How much time do
Bapak?
I still
Oh,
have?
okay. Sorry, Pak. It's kind of, the network isn't good here. So you still have about 15 minutes, Bapak.
All right, so let me speed up anyhow.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, everyone. Rubric is not going to be 100% fixed, everyone. Even though now, for example, I provide you these kinds of rubric, I told you before that this probably works at your school, or even in contrast with that, is not going to work, is not going to be working at all into your school. But the very important aspect at the very beginning that we need to have, again, as I told you in the previous slide, samples of rubric. So now I'm going to try to provide the rubric that is very common for us to use. That is first, conversation rubric. So it's very common for us in the classroom. We are going to score the student for their conversation. So that's why we need to have the rubric for conversation. Probably later on that you are going to also need to have a different rubric, but let me try to have this. Check again, everyone. Check again at the very beginning. First, there is engagement, listening skills, clarity and coherence, vocabulary and language use, and nonverbal communication. Check this element at first. When you are not familiar with these kinds of element, try to adjust yourself, try to find out which one is basically more familiar to you. This is very important at the very beginning. But keep in mind that the most important aspect, it must match to what the instructional objective. What is the objective? Right here, the objective that the students are able to have the conversation. The students are able to have the conversation by activating the certain expression, blah, blah, blah. For example, because we are trying to log into the certain language expression, for example. But mostly when we are talking about conversations, we may take this as the option. Again, this is not going to be fixed. This is not going to be 100% fixed for you. This is going to be consideration for you to take. This is conversation. The next one, this is going to be important consideration for you to take. The next one is presentation, because I believe that during your class processes, you also have the moment that you need to score your student presentation, especially with monologue tag. For example, when you are dealing with analytical exposition, hortatory exposition, or even such kind, for example, discussion tag or many more tags. So you need to have your student, you need to score your student presentation. So in that way, you need to have this kinds of rubric. So check, is it always in 5 element? No, it's not always. Once again, is it not going to be 100% fixed? So check here, content, delivery, visual aids, engagement, and time management. What about when we talk about structure of the text? So again, you need to adjust yourself in what way you are going to make these kinds of rubric worth it to you. This is going to be how you can use the rubric, introduction to the students, explain them one by one, self and peer assessment, make sure that you shouldn't also be familiar with the rubric, and also try for one occasion, probably one student, okay, for example, Susan, please try to read the rubric, and I want you to score yourself once that you have your speaking ability and score yourself. So that's self-assessment. In the way that you are asking different students to score another student, so you have already given the occasion for your student on peer assessment. And feedback. Provide detailed feedback based on the rubric score to highlight strength and areas for improvement in speaking skill. This is going to be your task as a teacher. And revision refers to your task once that you need to revise the available rubric that you have already used in the classroom practices. Then again, I also provide the example for speaking storytelling rubric. So this is content, delivery, expression, engagement, and originality. So again, everyone, this is quite important for you to have these kinds of rubric. So in the way of this right here, you have already got the score 4, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1, limited, fair, good, and excellent. So you have this kinds of rubric. You have this kinds of way to classify whether your student is basically good with the certain area of content, delivery, expression, engagement, and originality. This is just the way similar to what I have already expressed in the previous slide. So I'm not going to explain it again. Well, everyone, feedback. This is going to be the last point that I can present to you. Feedback in class, in a speaking class, is really, really important. So probably step number 1 and number 2, step 1 to number 3 has already been familiar. So establish clear learning goals, collect performance data, analyze performance data. When you are doing such a way like that, so you have already got the rubric. So you have, once that you have the rubric, so of course that you have already established clear learning goals. Collect performance data means that once that you have already handed with you the rubric, and then you have already face your students, so you collect the data, the data of the student performance. And then right after their performance, you analyze the performance data. Then here it is. Provide specific feedback. So this is what I want you to know even better. Probably this is not going to be very helpful once that you are talking to your student by saying, okay, excellent, your performance is really excellent, good job. That is basically, or that has been good already, but that's not really supporting to what your student's ability. So try to provide specific feedback. Among others, are the example like this. Your pronunciation is difficult. Words like entrepreneur and innovation was very clear and accurate, which made your presentation easy to follow. However, you had some difficulty maintaining eye contact throughout the presentation, which may have affected your connection with the audience. To improve, try to engage with your audience more by making eye contact and using gestures to enhance your delivery. Try to focus on what aspect that basically these sentences show to you. There are a lot of things expressed by this teacher when the teacher providing the feedback. Rather than saying, good, your performance is good. Okay, your fluency is good, rather than giving such kind of specific feedback. Check again. Focus on strength and areas for growth. So probably when you have already made things quite clear for your students, okay, this is your strength, and probably even that this is your strength, so you may develop this kinds of area. Check again. You did a great job structuring your presentation with clear introduction, body, and conclusion. Check the word great job structuring your presentation. But check area for growth. Your use of visual aids effectively supported your point and kept the audience engaged. Moving forward, let's work on incorporating more varied vocabulary. This is what we mean as areas for growth. Incorporating more varied vocabulary to enhance the richness of your speech and to further captivate your audience. So in addition to saying the student's strength, so you need to also mention which area that basically student can develop. So that is a very good point. Use descriptive language. So I don't really want to explain. I believe that you are quite excellent saying this. Offer suggestion for improvement. So we already discussed a little bit previously, areas for growth, similar to that. Encourage reflection and provide opportunities for practice. So I believe that you have already done anything during this kinds of process. Monitor progress and adjust feedback. Foster a growth mindset. And I guess this kinds of thing I can present to you this session. I believe there are a lot of things that might make your thinking process quite burden. So that's why I invite you to have further question and answer session. And I return back again to Miss Nadia.
All
I return back
right.
again.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Chen, and I've just known your nickname, so we can call Pak Kusen as Mr. Chen, right, sir?
Okay.
All right. So is that the way your students call you, Mr. Chen?
Yes.
Ah, all
And it
right.
has been about, if I'm not mistaken, this is about 24 years ago.
Wow. All right. Okay, Mr. Chen, I'm going to call you as, just like what your students call you. Okay,
Okay,
thank
thank
you.
you.
All right. So, teachers, I believe that you have got many kinds of ideas that you are going to implement in your classroom. So, this is actually what we have talked about with Mr. Chen when we have rehearsal, right, before we start this Zoom. So, we believe that there must be something that you have to bring in your classroom later that you can implement. And then I'm so happy that Mr. Chen today have he has given us, uh, the ways and strategies from the very beginning, okay, until how we should give feedback, right? Okay, so that's the very complete explanation. Thank you so much, Mr. Chen. And I guess it is time for us to have question and answer session. And I can see that there are some of you teachers who have raised your hand. I can see Bapak Baharudin, Mr. Baharudin from Kendari. All right. Mr. Baharudin, are you there?
Yes,
Please.
I'm here.
Okay, Bapak, if you have any question, you can start now, please.
Well, thank you for nice presentation from Bapak Muhammad Kusen.
Okay.
Sorry, kind of echo from around here, but that's pretty much inspiring, I think. But as far as I'm concerned, actually, I've also read a lot rubrics, tools for gauging students' performance, especially in speaking. The problem is when I have been designing a kind of rubric based on references I've read, and the most problem is it's not really applicable as what I'm expecting when I come into the classroom. Like your rubrics, that's pretty complex, I think, to apply in the classroom, where we have a very short time to have a face-to-face interaction with the students. And this kind of problem, I think, may other teachers have a lot, find the same problem too. So you suggest us to make a reflection, to do a reflection after coming into the classroom and to see what is fit, what is matched to the classroom condition, and what is not, to do a review and to make changes for future classroom. But regarding the newest curriculum Merdeka in Indonesia that pretty much concern like focusing on the constructivism theory, I only want kind of opinion or your suggestion for my classroom, which are very very different in level of language competence and academic level, and including speaking, of course. The most problem in my classroom was vocabulary and speaking anxiety, including. And that's also one of the speaking barriers in my classroom, and I do really think that's pretty complicated to apply a kind of rubric, which is very complex with this criteria and indicators and scores for the students. So
Okay.
this I want to suggest me in which way I have to apply the references of the rubrics of first speaking classroom. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Baharudin. Thank you also for explaining your classroom, right? And then also you have delivered all of the teachers, yeah, our, what is that? Also our problem, our issues in our class, right? Okay, so thank you so much, Mr. Baharudin. So, Mr. Chen, yes, I can see that Mr. Baharudin is asking about, when we as a teacher have designed a rubric, and then if we bring it in the classroom, there are a lot of things happen. Okay, especially when the range of students level is, yeah, they're just too big, the gap between one student to another. And how can we deal with this one? And how can, if you have any suggestion for, uh, yeah, do something with the rubrics. All right. So
All
yeah,
right,
how
thank
can
you.
you usually deal with this one? Thank you.
Thank
Yes,
you, Miss
please.
Nadia. And thank you for Mr. Baharudin for asking me such a very brilliant questions. I'm not going to explain long enough, but at least, Mr. Baharudin, I used to be at school that I used to be in school where my students are very proficient in English. But now I'm sitting in the situation that my students are no longer as is lucky as it was. So when you're asking me about the rubric, when you're asking me about the condition, so basically the one knows better our student is us as a teacher. So when you're asking about how to apply or the applicable rubric is basically at the very first time that we basically need to measure ourselves and how we can bring this into our class context. So we know our students are. So when we know our students, so basically we are not going to, if, all right, I have already shown you 3 different format of the rubric for presentation, for conversation, and for storytelling. When even that you are going to take conversation but you disagree with that, so that will be fine, because you know exactly your student, you know exactly the level of your language, you know exactly the level of the language of the student. So what I'm saying is, so you need to know at first the level of your students at first. So in that way, so what I can do, for example, I'm doing what I'm doing in my school. So even like reading aloud is also applicable when, for example, your students are not even having the right competence in speaking. So at the very first time, so what you need to implement at the very first time is reading aloud, just to make sure that their fluency is good enough. So in that way, later on, when you can develop this, so since that we are in curriculum Merdeka, you are not demanded to the certain things, but you know exactly that you yourself should develop your student. So what I'm saying is that please try to adapt, not adopt. Try to adapt the available rubric. So you yourself need to adjust that. In designing the rubric, you yourself know your students, who they are. So you need to make such kind of adjustment on that. So like my example last time, even for example, even the worst scenario, your students are unable to say things. So you need to begin from reading aloud, because reading aloud can also be measured as the way to measure the speaking skill, at least for the fluency. So among other things like that. Thank you. That's all, Ms. Nadia, probably my answer regarding to Mr. Baharudin questions.
All right, sir. Yeah, it's really, practical explanation that we all teachers can directly, implement that one, right? Because yeah, there are a lot of students in our classroom. Sometimes they, in speaking practice or speaking assessment, they do not even say a word. Right? Okay. Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Chen. Yeah, okay. So now I guess we still can have one more yeah, a
Okay,
question from a
please.
teacher, right? Okay. I can see that, okay, who is the first one raising hand? Ibu Shell or Ibu Atik? We are so sorry that we have to choose the woman, right? Okay. Okay.
Sorry for the rest, probably. So later
Yes,
on, in different
Mr.
occasion, we
Cecep,
can discuss.
Mr. Yes,
Yeah,
Mr.
okay.
Dermawan, and also Mr. Ahmad Sultan. So sorry, and also Michelle. Yeah, because I'm going to choose, and I have to choose. Okay, Miss Atik. Okay, Miss Atik. Yes, please, if you have any question.
Well, thank you for this opportunity to me that I know well Mr. Chen that he is staying in one town with me.
Ah,
That-
nice.
Yeah. She's my
Alright.
partner actually. But the most important thing that we know well about our quality, the student of here in Kediri. One more thing that I ask to you, Mr. Chen, how to, what is it? Erase the assumption of the student that English is difficult. I think that is the most important thing that we to face our student. That's
Okay,
all,
okay.
Mr. Chen.
All right, Miss Atik. Yes, thank
Thank
you
you
so
so
much.
much.
Okay, thank you for the question. I can see that, yeah, that's also our, the things that we are worried about, right? All of the students, yeah, always tell the teachers, I don't like English because it's just too hard. Right? Okay, so, okay, so what do you think, Mr. Chen? Please.
All right. Brilliant question. Thank you, Mrs. Ati, for questioning me that way. So basically, we live in the situation where what we believe in Indonesia, and even in so many theories, we are talking about English is as a language commonly as a means of communication. So communication should be treated in the way that you need to develop the quality of how people communicate. When you develop your student in the way that learning a language should master about grammar for a very detailed way, so they are going to be very frustrated with that kind of grammar at the very first time. So place the position that your learners or your student basically know exactly that the need of learning a language is for communication. Second of all, try to select topic or material that is closely related to their life. I used to have this kinds of idea once I use probably Mrs. Ati has already got my my sharing of experience of how I use Instagram and how I use the local culture to bring about. So I use the place for Mbah Wasil as the big mosque in Kediri, and that one is going to be the source of information, and the students should describe that. So in that way, so basically, we need to get the material that is very, very close to them, rather than giving the material that is too hard for them, that even their brain system doesn't even touch that. So probably we live in Kediri, for example, but then we talk about, life condition in Singapore, life condition in Kuala Lumpur, for example. But that is okay, but then begin from very, very close context at first, rather than talking about cross-cultural understanding. Cross-cultural understanding is basically really important. Yes, indeed, I believe on that. But then make sure at the very beginning, because you are asking for the very, very basic level of understanding of how to use the language. So first, make sure that language is used as communication, and try to get the very close material or content of the loot for the student that is close to their real life. Thank you.
Okay, so Mr. Chen, yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, I can see that, yeah, we have to make sure, right? The contents that we have is more, contextual and closer to their activities. And then the things that you have said before on the first time, on the very beginning, yeah, language is for communication, right? Okay, that's the things that we have to share also to our students. Okay, Mr. Chen, thank you so much for sharing and
You're
also
welcome.
for giving us insightful session. And I
Thank you.
guess it is time for me to ask about the keyword for today's webinar from you. What is it, Mr. Chen?
The keyword is feedback.
Feedback. Okay, so why you take feedback for why you take feedback to be your keyword, sir?
Yes. Why I think that feedback is going to be my keyword. Everyone at the very beginning, I'm talking about any kind of activities, assessment, and process. Above all that, we as a teacher should have the ability to promote our students. And one of which, the way to promote our student is by trying to provide the corrective feedback, supportive feedback. In that way, later on, by being given the corrective feedback and supportful feedback, our student can even perform better in the future. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Chen. Okay. Yeah, that's really insightful, of course. Okay. Sometimes, yeah, not sometimes, often we forgot to give meaningful feedback, right, to our students. Okay, and you remind us again about that. Thank you so much, Mr. Chen. Okay. Okay. So thank you. All right. So I guess we're going to meet again with Mr. Chen later for group photo session, Mr. Chen. Right? Okay. Thank you for today's session, Mr. Chen. And we are going to give also the slide for you later or through email, Bapak Ibu, so do not worry, okay? All right, so now we are going to go to our second session to meet Mr. Kevin, okay? And then before that, let's watch this video first. Thank you.
Lesson plan-nya sangat bagus sekali, sangat membantu sekali. Karena memang juga jelas ini bagian mana partnya, mana misalnya menyimak atau berbicara. Dengan LMS ini sangat-sangat terbantu. Itu selalu, anak-anak selalu minta, begitu masuk, hari ini Mister jadwalnya Atlas. Saya bilang, iya, oke. Terus boleh nggak 10 menit di awal kami main penguin. Dia mainnya tidak hanya di sekolah, tapi di rumah juga dia main. Karena dia sangat ini sekali, menyenangkan sih menurut saya.
Maksudnya nggak ada yang jenuh gitu. Pas susah, bosan, nggak ada itu. Ya anak-anak semangat juga. Mereka harus mendengarkan dulu penjelasan gurunya, baru mereka bisa ini. Jadi itu ada tantangan buat mereka untuk mencari tahu. Jadi lebih tertantang di buku Atlas ini.
Terlebih lagi kalau di buku itu kan kita tahu gambar-gambarnya yang menarik. Pas mereka bikin ekstrakurikuler yang gambar dan presentasikan, mereka malah nanya, "Sir, menurut Sir apa yang harusnya ada ekstrakurikuler di sini?" Jadi kita sharing. Itu pas banget kan sama materinya. Saya gunakan juga sebagai buat speaking test mereka.
Pun juga akan membuat guru dan juga murid-murid jadi tertarik, dan begitu juga untuk bahasanya lain. Jadi kalau kata murid-murid yang lain, Miss ini bukunya bagus loh, karena bahasa Inggrisnya nggak yang dasar-dasar lagi, kayak latihannya memang agak menantang Miss, kayak begitu. Saya dan anak-anak sih menganggapnya udah memang levelnya memang naik gitu.
All right, Bapak Ibu. Yeah, so the video that you have just watched are some of our teachers who have experienced their, experience using Atlas, right? Okay, so now Bapak Ibu, I guess you are very excited to have our second session, and I'm going to call Mr. Kevin to be here to deliver the second session, right? Okay, so Mr. Kevin, I guess the floor is yours, please.
All right, thank you so much, Miss Nadia. Okay, so I think I can get started right away, right? Okay, so hello everyone. It's good to see all of you. For some of you, I think I have met you before. I remember there was this Mr. with a really nice hat. I forgot where are you right now, but you were there. It was really nice. And I remember you were asking me a question last time. It was really nice to talk to you and to get to see all of you again. Okay, so let me just share my screen right away because I also have a lot to share, but I'll try not to get too deep, as also Mr. Chen has mentioned, right? Because if we're talking about specific skills, especially sub skills, so we can get hours or even days without it stopping. So I'll try to just maybe like tap into it a little bit. Okay, so for my topic, so Mr. Chen has mentioned a little bit more about the speaking side, right? So I'll be talking more about the writing. So today's topic is basically about productive skills. It's about how to gauge students' abilities, but not just to gauge them, but actually to do something with them, right? So like the feedback that Mr. Chen has already told us as well, I think that's really, really great. So we're gonna see like something, how we can do it in writing as well. So without further ado, this is just a little bit about myself. So my name is Kevin. So I am the Chief Product Officer at Atlaz here. I have graduated from the University of Southern California with a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration. And I've been the Director of Studies at English First and been teaching English since 2018, in charge of developing teachers and academic excellence. And also I've been teaching students from the age of 3 years old to adults. So actually the last one is a bit funny because I was talking to Ms. Nadia today. Okay, so we have a lot of teachers coming in today, right? But there are teachers from elementary school, but also like from junior high school, also senior high school. So if we're talking about writing, there's actually a lot to cover and they're all very different, right? So I try to make it as general as possible and hopefully it can be applicable to most of you. So for today's agenda, what I'll be going over today, we'll talk about the writing itself, what it is, right? And the different types of writing there are, and teaching writing strategies, and also a little bit about academic writing, because I think some of you might be interested, especially if you are maybe thinking of taking TOEFL or IELTS yourself, or maybe you want to teach them to your students. I think this will be really, really useful. And the last one is the scoring rubrics. As Mr. Chen has mentioned as well, right? It's important, and how Atlaz actually already provided this rubrics for you, all of you, and they're all also tailored towards each of the, I would say, different levels that we have here. And we will also see how artificial intelligence can help us in terms of grading the writing as well. Okay, so just to get us started, I want everybody to write in the chat box, right? In your own words. What is writing? So I'll give you some time. What is writing? How would you define writing if somebody asks you, like, what is writing? Yes, Mr. Dharmawan. Oh, I'm great. Thanks for asking. I just saw the question there in the chat box. But for everybody else, what do you think is writing? Pouring what is inside your mind. That's really nice, Miss Veronica. I think Miss Veronica was the one that, yeah, with the green hair. I like it. It's really fancy, Miss. Really, really nice. Writing is a way of expressing things, expressing idea writtenly. Organization of ideas, productive process. They're all really good questions. Answers. Oh, wow. Thank you. The activity of skill of marking coherent words on paper and composing text. Yeah. Wow. Very, very nice. Good. So it seems like most of us we know what they are, right? But when it comes to like defining, sometimes when it comes to defining a word, it's hard to define it not using the word itself, right? Sometimes we want to use the word. Yeah, so we put our ideas writtenly, or maybe we write it, or whatever it is. But yes, okay, so yes, the activity of creating pieces of written word, very, very nice. Communicating throughout time and space. That's actually one of the really, really good answers, because writing actually, like, if we are talking about how it came into place from the first place, right? So like we were writing on stones, and we have like all this, like, what is it? The glyphs, right? How they are all came into history. So they're all basically evolving into what we know as text, writing on paper. And right now we're all seeing on our screen, right? Digitally as well. But what it actually is, right? It is a form of human communication by means of a set of visible marks. So I would underline that, right? Visible marks that are related by convention to some particular structural level of language. So actually, the marks are what make writing different than the other skills, right? So if we're talking about other skills, maybe it's not as visible. So writing has to be visible, so that there's that kind of difference and that kind of significance in the writing itself. And that's why it's really important. And I do know that teaching writing is not easy. So especially when I was talking with my previous teachers, when I was still a manager at EF, a lot of them would ask me, like, how do you teach writing? Or how do I motivate my students to write, even though the teachers have tried their best? It's really hard. So the first question I ask usually, and I want you to answer as well, do you like writing? That's my only question. Do you like writing? Oh, yes, Miss Intan said writing is like the most difficult skill in English to elementary school. Exactly, right? We have to start from tracing, writing letters, words, turning into sentences, all of these, right? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I love writing caption on Instagram. Yeah, that's right, Miss Nadia. Yes, of course, love writing, love writing. Sure, yep. I like to write text to my husband. Oh, wow, yes. Definitely, right? And you would like to receive some feedback from them as well, obviously. Okay, I do, but I don't regularly write. But what kind of writing? Oh, it can be any kind of writing. So if you write on WhatsApp, that's also called writing, right? Yeah. Or I have my own books. Ooh, wonderful. That's from Mr. or Miss Benny? Miss Benny. Yeah, that's really awesome. Wow. Yeah, yeah. I also like to write to my ex. That sounds like a song that I think I've heard before. Okay, shout out to my ex. Okay, good. Very, very nice. So that's good, right? So we all love writing, but when it comes to asking ourselves writing, what kind of things do we write? If we're talking about writing, maybe text or WhatsApp, Instagram caption, we love it so much. But when it comes to writing essays, let's say we have to write 500 words or 300 words, or write a dissertation if you are going to graduate from your, what is that called? Master's degree, right? So that might be a totally different answer. You can still type in the chat as well. But usually when I ask my teachers, I would say like only about 10% of all the teachers that I have met actually love writing. So for me, myself, I love writing. I have always loved writing. Even though like back then when I was still in high school, my writing, I would say like it was really terrible. Like if we're talking about grammar, things like that. But I love writing. So that's why when it comes to teaching writing, I am very passionate about it. So that's what I want all of you to remember, at least like the takeaway from the session today is that you yourself needs to be passionate enough to teach writing because it is not an easy task and not a lot of students like it. Not even teachers like writing long text, right? So there has to be more, I would say, motivation coming from us as the teachers. Okay, good. So how many different types of writing are there in English? So please write down in the chat box. Just shout out some numbers. Are there maybe like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7? How many different types of writing do you think there are? Writing is a productive skill. Yes, exactly. Writing and speaking are both productive skills, right? Because we have to produce. Very, very nice. So how many different types do you think? Oh, thank you, Miss Astri. But please answer my question though. 3 types. Okay, Mr. Ahmad said. Okay, so 3 types, 4 times. Okay. So waiting for some more. I don't know, sir. That's okay. I also didn't know, so I had to Google this one as well. But I think it's important when we're teaching writing that we know how many different types there are, right? Because we cannot teach writing the same way. If let's say we are being asked by our principal or by the book to teach writing, we need to know exactly first what kind of writing we are doing, right? Narrative, expository. Yeah, Mr. Dharma, very nice. Argumentative, maybe 7 types. Yes, Miss Venti, very, very nice. Good, very, very nice. So there are actually more, but these are just at least some of them. You can see like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There are at least 9, but there can actually be more. So if we take into account writing, what is it called now? There's a captions. That's also considered a different type of writing, right? It's different. Even though we can say like it's descriptive, yes, but it is also different. And think about content writing when we're writing for marketing purposes, when we're promoting something, that's also a different type of writing. So we actually have evolved and we will have more and more and more and more. And even right now, if any of you have been using artificial intelligence, you know, we need to know how to write prompts, right? How to ask something from the artificial intelligence itself. So that itself is already a different type of writing. But these are just some of them, okay? You can take a look and you can Google them yourselves. But what's most important is that when we are teaching each of these, we need to know that there are different strategies. So we cannot say, let's say, okay, I'm going to teach narrative today, and maybe next time I'll teach descriptive and expository, but then you're teaching them the same way. So there has to be some different strategies to each of them. But today we're not going to be talking about each of the skills because I think that will take a long time, but at least for you to just know that you need to have different strategies when it comes to approaching these different types of writing itself. So these are some of the general strategies that I would like to share with you how to teach writing. So the first one, before it comes to writing anything at all. So let's say you come to class, right? You're introducing the topic and you're telling like, okay, we're going to do some sort of writing today. So the first one that you want to do is you want to encourage learners to think why they are writing. So don't come to class and just say like, okay, we're going to learn writing today. So grab a piece of paper and start writing. Or I'll give you a question and start writing. So that's not how it's effectively work, right? So you have to actually engage them first. And how do you engage them? So think of something that is in terms of the writing itself that the students enjoy doing. So let's start from, let's say, texting WhatsApp. If any of your students tell you, Miss, I don't like writing, I hate writing. Like, you know, like some students, they would say that, right? Especially if they're teenagers, they would say, I hate writing, I don't like writing. So then you just ask them, so you don't like sending text messages to your friends? So you don't like sending WhatsApp messages to your friends? You don't like seeing some posts online? You don't like reading some stories about YouTubers online and reading some of the comments? You don't like writing the comments? So these are all different types of writing, right? So essentially everybody likes writing, but we just don't know what it is, and or it's just a different type of writing. So before we jump into teaching them writing, we need to change the mindset first that writing itself is not something that they hate or they dislike. That's something that we need to change first. And the second one, what's also important is who are they writing to? So the audience is also important because a lot of time when we are giving students assignment, okay, you have to write an essay, 300 words. Okay, then the students are writing, but then they actually are not as motivated. Why? Because they don't know who the audience is. Who are they writing to, right? So always give the audience, even though this is an academic writing. So tell them, let's say, imagine you're writing to your principal. Imagine you're writing to me as your teacher. Imagine you're writing this to your friend. So having that kind of mindset already sets the tone for them. They don't even have to think about like what kind of language they have to use because they already automatically know, oh, if I'm writing to my principal, obviously it's going to be more formal than I'm writing to my friends, obviously, right? Or if I'm writing a letter, then I need to have a specific template. So the audience matters as well. So before writing, don't forget to do this. And I took this information from the TKT book. So if any of you would like to see more, feel free to buy it and just read it yourself. It's really good and it's very practical as well. Then when it comes to teaching the writing itself, we need to know, so this is the same as when I was giving the webinar, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago. I think it was more about fluency versus accuracy. This is exactly that, but it's just called something a little bit different. It's something called communication and accuracy. So think of communication as fluency in speaking. So when it comes to fluency, we talk about it before, right? So we talk about how we shouldn't really stop students, let's say, when they are giving presentation because they made a grammatical mistake. Or maybe when they are doing a role play with their friends and they made a mistake and you just automatically want to correct them right away. You want to, because it's in your nature as a teacher to correct them. But you need to understand when it comes to communication-based or fluency, you need to allow them to make errors because that is also part of the learning process itself. So if we don't allow them to make errors, then they are not going to learn from their mistakes. So when it comes to writing and we are focusing on communication based, we can do some sort of activities like this, story completion, for example. So you give out, let's say, a story of Cinderella, right? And then they need to imagine at the end what happens with Cinderella, right? And it doesn't have to be exactly the same as how it is, right? Maybe it turns out that Cinderella finds a different husband, or maybe the prince becomes the ex. That's also okay, right? So, but that is possible. And in Atlas, we also have that. If you have our books and you have taken a look, you will see we actually ask some students to say like, okay, so what do you think happened next? Or what do you wish happened next, for example? Or jumbled picture stories, right? So this is very, this is like the information gap activity that Mr. Chen has mentioned, but that was for speaking. This is for writing, right? So in terms of writing, so they have to maybe like put out like different text to different pictures and make like a storyline, how it comes into place, things like that. Or they can write birthday cards to their friends or to their family members, writing emails of invitation. So something fun, right? So communication based is basically just doing it for the function, like fluency, basically, right? So we know, let's say, okay, we have a purpose. We have a friend that has a birthday, so we want to write a birthday card to them. So that is the communication based. On the other hand, when we're talking about accuracy, then this is talking about, let's say, grammar, obviously, right? Talking about the errors that they're making, and we want to make sure they're not making any mistakes when they're writing. So this can be something like sentence completion. So for example, let's say we're learning about past tense. So we give them like what is that called? Like fill in the blanks. So for example, they blah 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 a burger yesterday. So we give them option. Do we say they eat or they ate? And we underline the keyword. There's yesterday, and yesterday refers to the past. Obviously, that means they need to use past tense, right? Then they have to write down ate, for example. So, or you can do sentence transformation. This is like turning tenses, right? So turn the past present tense to the past tense, or past tense to the present tense. Or you can also do something like active voice to passive voice, because usually when teachers ask like, how to teach passive voice? I remember, I think it was last year, right, Ms. Nadia? There were a lot of teachers asking like, how do you teach passive voice? One of them is teach them the active one first. Make sure they remember what the active ones are first, then ask them to transform. That's also a possibility. Then also paying attention to punctuation, right? Obviously, because it's accuracy. Dividing text into paragraphs so they know which one belongs to what. That is one of the things that you can do as well when it comes to accuracy based. So there are more, I would say, but you need to be able to label them. Are they more communication based or accuracy based? So don't mix them up, because let's say when you are doing what's that called? Story completion at the end, the ending, and you pay so much attention on the accuracy. You pay so much attention so that students don't make any grammatical mistakes at all. Then the students will sort of lose motivation because they're so afraid of making mistakes. They end up not having any ideas and they think, I don't know, miss. I don't know, mister. I don't want to do it because I don't know, right? That's usually what happens at the end because you're just so afraid of making mistakes. So when it comes to doing something that is communication based, make sure that they are not afraid to make mistakes, because this is the time when they are producing and you are not stopping them from producing, and they can be as creative as possible. So just know the difference and don't mix them up, basically. Later on, I think once you are used to it, it comes automatically to you. It comes naturally, and you understand like, oh, this is the time when I just don't stop them from making mistakes. This is the time when I just allow them to just keep going, for example, because that is also important. So these are just some teaching writing strategies. So I would like to tap a little bit. So this is probably more for yourself as teachers, obviously. Also for if you're teaching maybe like high school, for example. In the future, you might be facing students who might have to take TOEFL or IELTS, and they might have some writing tasks they have to do, right? So this is based from TOEFL, but in IELTS it's the same as well, I would say. So there are two different types of tasks there are, right? The first one is independent writing. The second one is integrated. So if we're talking about independent, this is very much something that we are very familiar with. So this is free writing. Students are asked questions where they have to state their opinions and give reasons for their arguments. As simple as that. So you can see the example there. Do you agree or disagree with the following statement? Students do not respect the teachers as much as they did in the past. Use specific reasons and examples to support your answer. So they have to create their own answer, right? This is their own opinion. is not based on data, it's not based on something else, it's not based on somebody else's experience, it's themselves. So that's called independent. That's why it's called independent. So this type of writing is more, it's freer, and the students have more options of what they want to write. So this is sort of what it's supposed to look like when it comes to independent writing. So there has to be structure, obviously, right? Because if we're just writing and there's no structure, then they're not going to get good grades. So I will show you what the rubrics look like at the end. But at least this is what it looks like in terms of the example. So the example, you can see there's the introduction, there's the body paragraphs, and there's also conclusion. So it always is like that. So if you're going to teach this to your students, just ask them like, just to remember to have an introduction, body paragraph, and conclusion. The body paragraphs, it depends on the students, how many paragraphs they want to write. It doesn't really matter, but it needs to be in the structure. That's if we're talking about independent writing, okay? So you don't have to read this, don't worry, because this is more TOEFL material, so C2 level. I think it will be quite a headache if you try to understand what it is right now. But at least this is what's a good model answer should be like when it comes to independent writing. Then the other one that's called integrated writing. So the term integrated itself, I'm pretty sure you're familiar. It means we are integrating different skills. We're not just talking about writing. So in this case, integrated writing takes reading as well as the listening interface. So on the left side, you see there's the direction. Give yourself 2 minutes to read the passage. So this is when it comes to reading something. Then on the right side, there is listening. So, well, definitely on the test, they will not see the transcript, but this is, I'm just showing it to you because this is what it looks like. So the students will have to listen to an audio. Then the question comes at the end, at the bottom. Summarize the points made in the lecture, being sure to explain how they cast doubt on specific points made in the reading passage. So this is usually more juxtaposition style, where this lecturer usually responds to the reading itself, and you have to compare and contrast basically between the two. So this is sort of what integrated writing looks like. So in terms of the structure, you can still use the independent way, this way for sure. But before going here, if you're going to train your students to write a good integrated writing essay, you need to give them some sort of structure first. So for example, like this. So put the points into the tables first. So the students understand what kind of points were being made in the reading, what kind of points were being made by the lecturer. Then they can compare and contrast. It's easier that way. But usually at first, it is always harder because the students will take time. They're not used to making tables, right? They're not like teachers. We get used to like writing rubrics ourselves. They are students, so it will take them some time to make this kind of table. But that's okay, and it's worth it. And I applied it myself, and I have also taught my students when they were taking TOEFL and IELTS as well, and it had been successful. So at first, yes, it takes a long time, but you can time it and get faster and faster. But basically, always start with the structure first. If you don't have a structure and you kind of omit this stage, the essay later will not flow as smoothly. So this is why we actually need to talk about using structure like this. So table, juxtaposition, compare and contrast. This can be used for anything. So not just about the lecture and the reading. It could be used for, let's say, if they are disagreeing and agreeing with each other, whatever it is. So it doesn't matter what kind of writing it is, independent or integrated, we need to have an outline. So when it comes to structure, we need to have an outline. So I made this outline myself. Feel free to take a screenshot. If you want to use it to your class, feel free to as well. I had used this with my previous students as well when they were writing essays, and it has been really, really useful. So I think we roughly spent about 40 to 50 minutes just to finish out the outline first. Then later in the future, in the next lesson, then I would ask them to write the actual essay, and that might take maybe another 40 minutes. So if you're wondering, like, why do we have to do this first? So this is what I mentioned earlier. So if you have an outline, then everything will be more structured and it will be more flowing. It will be it will be smoother. So you can see, right? I divide it into the introduction, there's the body, and there's also the conclusion. So I'll get into like each one of them in different slides, but feel free to take a screenshot. And I think this is really useful if you are, what is that called? Senior high school teachers, and you are going to teach them how to write essay properly, or some junior high school students as well, junior students, you can also use it with them. Definitely, when it comes to writing essays. And if we're talking about academic essays, really, really useful. This is actually one of the tricks if you are taking any TOEFL classes, that the teacher will probably use this because the structure is being asked in the TOEFL itself. So in terms of the introduction, the first sentence, write the hook. So what is the hook? Hook is something that is interesting. Obviously, when you want to write something, you want to tell your students, okay, imagine if, let's say, you're reading a novel and the first sentence is just so boring. Would you read the novel? Probably not, right? So that's why write the hook. The first sentence needs to be really interesting. So, but it doesn't have to be specific, just something interesting. Introduce the general theme or the topic of the essay. So for example, something like, so we all understand the importance of saving electricity, right? For example, so things like that. Then sentence number 2, narrower topic. Write something that is more specific than the first sentence, so you're getting narrower and narrower. So that's how the introduction should be like. So don't talk about something specific right away. So don't start with, today I will be writing about this. So if you get that specific, that means the sentence doesn't flow well, right? Because you get straight to the point, then the sentences that come after, they become redundant or they become too detailed. So start with something general, getting narrower. Then sentence number 3, you restate the question. So paraphrase, rewrite the question in your own words. If we, let's say, took a look, let's go back a little bit. So there was a question here, right? Do you agree or disagree with the following statement? Students do not respect their teachers as much as they did in the past. So that's the question, right? So then we restate that question, we rephrase or we paraphrase it. That's why it's important to know how to paraphrase as well, right? So to answer the question of whether students respect their teachers as much as they did in the past or not, I would like to blah, 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 blah. So that's how I would write it, right? So we rephrase it that way. That's restating the question in a different way. So you're not copying the question, but you're saying it in your own words. So to make it interesting. Then the last one, write your thesis statement, whether you agree or disagree, right? So that's the whole point of the essay itself. You need to state it at the beginning. So don't wait until the end. Don't wait until the conclusion. Why? Because the readers need to understand that the following body paragraphs are supporting your thesis statement. So that's about the introduction. The second one, but the body paragraphs. So body paragraphs, you can have as many as you want. It depends. If let's say you want to bring out 3 different points, you can have 3 different body paragraphs, or even if it's just 2, that's okay. But I wouldn't suggest just 1, because if it's just 1, that means it's probably too short. So at least 2 or 3, could be even more, but try to stick with odd numbers. Usually like odd numbers are better than even numbers. So if you're gonna do 3 or 5, but 5 could be like a little bit long, but that ideally will be 3. So each body paragraph should have this, the topic sentence, right? So, and then the supporting evidence. Don't just have one evidence. So let's say, I agree with the statement that teachers are being disrespected nowadays because I saw one student did that to me. And that's it. So that's not enough. You need to bring in more evidence. You can do 2 different evidences or 3, it doesn't matter, but at least not just one to support your argument. Then you also need to end your paragraph with a sentence relating back to the thesis statement. So all the body paragraphs need to relate back to the thesis statement. So you cannot really say something that is not related, because at the end of the day, it's an academic writing essay, right? That means it needs to lead back to your argument, your main argument itself. So if you forget to do it, then all you need to do is just add 1 more sentence and tailor it back. Basically, as simple as that. Then the conclusion at the very end, right? Restate your thesis, obviously. That's the first thing you want to do, because at the end of the day, you want to convince the readers that this is my point of view, I agree or I disagree, blah, 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 blah. But do not copy and paste from your thesis from introduction to make it more interesting, because otherwise they will think like you don't have enough vocabulary or you are not well structured, that you just copy and paste. So paraphrase, say it in a different way. And sentence number 2, restate all the topic sentences. So if you have 3 body paragraphs, that means you are going to restate 3 different topic sentences in the second sentence. Then number 3, sentence 3 is your own opinion. This is optional. So depending on the type of writing, if they're asking for your opinion like this, do you agree or disagree? You can state your opinion there. But if they're asking, let's say, juxtapose or compare and contrast, they're not asking for your opinion. You do not need to add your opinion. Otherwise, it becomes a different type of essay, and the score might get actually deducted. Then the last one, sentence number 4, concluding statement. So this is flexible, but do not forget to close your essay. Okay, very nice. And either with a takeaway point, call to action, plausible solution, whatever that is, but close it off really nicely. And yeah, so that will be the very last sentence of your essay itself. So after knowing what we need, right? So all the components of a good academic essay, you can apply that for independent or integrated essay. Doesn't matter what it is, but you can use that outline for a lot of purposes. But now let's talk about the process when we're teaching the writing in class. So step number 1, what I would suggest is you brainstorm. So do not ask your students to just grab a piece of paper and start writing. Or let's say, start with once upon a time, blah, 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 blah. They will probably be absent-minded, or they don't know what to write about, or they're just going to stare at you, or they're just going to wait until the last 15 minutes to start writing. That is usually what happens. So instead of that happening, you brainstorm first. So talk together as a whole class. What are we talking about today? What do they have to write? Is it a fairy tale, or is it a letter? Have they ever written an email before, or are they texting their parents? Brainstorm first, develop the ideas first. Make sure that the students have a lot of ideas. This is a part of the scaffolding process itself, right? Because the students need some backgrounds, what they need to write about. The second one is the outline. So going back to the outline that I shared with you today, so they need to organize their thoughts into structures. So do not ask them to just write right away, because then the students will kind of, I would say, going back and forth between points. They might see themselves like, oh, I already talked about this, but now I'm repeating it again. Should I erase the first one, or what do I do? Then they're going to crumble their paper, throw it away, and start a new one. And you don't want that to happen to them, right? So have a clear mindset first, what the structure is going to be like. This is exactly the same if you're writing a book, right? So writing a book, it seems like to a lot of people, oh, we can just flow, just let it happen, right? But if you're writing a book, but you do not know how it's going to end, then it's going to be harder, right? Because the story will just keep going, and there's really no end to it. But there has to be an ending. There has to be structure, how it gets there, right? That's why there's an index of content. There are subdivisions. So that's why we need to put everything into structures first. Step number 3 is the drafting process. So drafting is the communication-based one. So this is the time when you do not stop them for making mistakes, basically. So if they make a mistake, let's say, I ate a burger yesterday, let it pass, because you do not want to stop them and have them think, oh, I made a mistake, I should have used past tense. Then they're going to lose the creative process when they are thinking too much about that. Later in the future, when the grammar is good enough, they will be able to correct that themselves. You don't need to worry about that. So during this drafting process, allow them to make a lot of mistakes, okay? So just write as much as possible, finish your job, basically. Then when it comes to step 4, this is the accuracy-based one, editing process. So it comes to correcting, adding more details, improving the content. So they're checking their answers again. They're checking the essay again. Oh, I made that mistake. Are we talking about right now, or in the future, or in the past? Should I keep the tenses consistent, or what? That's the step number 4. And step number 5 is the proofread. So proofread is checking for accuracies that are very detailed. So like punctuation, spelling, is a very, very final stage. So there's actually another step, that is step number 6. But this one is more if, let's say, you are a university student, let's say you're writing your, what is that called? Thesis, right? And then you're giving it to your professor and the professor giving it back to you. You have to redraft it again, obviously, right? So by the editing process itself. So that is step number 6. But we're not going to talk about that because we're just talking about the simple process for your students if they have to write an essay this way. So this is a little bit of rubric. I took this actually from IELTS because I think the IELTS rubric is just very comprehensive and they're very easy to understand, even though it's pretty wordy and it has a lot of words. But you can see how basically everything is divided into 4. So similar to the speaking skills, like Mr. Chen mentioned earlier, right? Same thing here. But in terms of, let's say, pronunciation, because we're not talking about pronunciation in writing, there's the pronunciation, right? It turns into punctuation, and that falls under accuracy. So we have the task achievement or the competence, basically on the left side. We want to grade how well the students understand the task. If we're asking them to write a letter, are they actually writing a letter or are they writing a text message? There are two different, these are two different things, right? Or let's say we're asking them to write a pro and con essay, but they're actually writing more an opinion essay. That's also different. So that's the task achievement or the competence. Then we have the coherence and the cohesion. So that's basically how flowing everything is from the very top until the very end. Are they flowing or are they kind of choppy? Are they talking about different things? Maybe they're talking about green energy at first, then suddenly they're talking about politics that are not related to it. They're talking about something else. So that's the coherence and cohesion, as well as the using the transitional words, such as like however, then, therefore, hence, so that the sentences are not choppy, right? So they are flowing as well. So that's why they need to know the structures. So first this happened, then next, after that, finally, that makes more sense, right? Then we get to lexical resource. Lexical means vocabulary. So basically, are they repeating the same word over and over again? Are they using different types of words? So that's why we need to enhance our vocabulary as well. We need to expand it. We need to know a lot more words. That's why we need to learn synonyms, how to paraphrase, so that our text is not boring, is not stagnant, right? Because imagine yourself reading a book, but the book is just, it keeps repeating itself over and over again, right? You will get bored. Obviously, it's the same thing. And the last one, grammatical range and accuracy. So this is basically the punctuation as well as their grammar. So if they made any grammatical mistakes or not, how well they are consistent at like their tenses, things like that. So basically you can give the scores this way. But in IELTS, because they're band based, so that's why you see the scores are on until 9. So there's, I think like the lowest is like 4 until 9. So 9 is the highest score basically for IELTS. But we don't have to use this, but at least I want to show it to you. So just you know that in the future, if you or your students need to take IELTS or to take TOEFL, this is what you'll be facing, right? So to get this band descriptors, basically this is what you need to refer yourself to if you want to get a better grade. And let's say you did a diagnostic test. Let's say I need to get a 7.5, but now it's a 6. So how do I get there? Then you read this, basically, to understand what it takes. Then the next one here. So, oh, this is Miss Nadia's answer. So in Atlas, we actually have something called the AI writing evaluator. So the artificial intelligence. I think if we have time, Miss Nadia will probably show it to you a little bit more, or maybe in the next webinar, but this is sort of what it looks like. So on the left side there, basically, if you're using Atlas, there will be some questions that are asked during the assessments. So students who have assessments for their writing, let's say, answer the following questions in complete sentences. What is your favorite color? Describe one thing you have in that color. What else do you want to have in that color? And Miss Nadia answered, my favorite color is blue. I have a blue t-shirt. I want to have a blue car. So maybe in terms of the response, it's quite good, right? But it's not perfect, but there's like deviation maybe, right? So basically, that's kind of like how the artificial intelligence is helping us as teachers to grade. And that is automatic, by the way. So the teachers actually will just have to check. And if there's anything that is inaccurate or something that they need to change, they just need to type in, delete it, type in the new words, that's it, and update the score. Then on the right side, I want to show it to you. This is basically what I made. So for all assessments in all our books, from English Play all the way to English Escalate from grade 1 until grade 12, you will have this. I have provided all the rubrics for speaking and for writing for you. So at least you know we are not keeping secrets, basically. So whatever the AI, the artificial intelligence is grading on, you know what is graded on. So on the right side, you can see, right? So there are grading criteria based on the competence, lexical, grammar, and also this is, I think, for speaking. That's why there's pronunciation. If it's for writing, it's supposed to be punctuation. But we have provided these basically to help you out. Obviously, you can change it, as Mr. Chen mentioned earlier. You have different types of students in your class. You might have to adjust it a little bit, but at least we've given you this, right, to get you started. So to make it easier to get you started, what kind of rubric do I have to use in my class? You have the rubric right here, basically. And that's all included in the classroom assessments. So to close off my sessions, I would like to give you some tips, basically. So some takeaways so that you can remember. So I have two types of tips, general tips and specific tips. I'll go over them real quickly. First one, do not write and edit at the same time. So if you or any of your students are doing this, please don't do this. If you want to edit later after you're done with your writing. Because if not, you're going to waste your time because you're going to keep going back and recorrect, and keep doing that, and you will never end. That's the same thing if you're writing a book, right? If you want your book to end, then you cannot really just edit it all the time. You need to keep going. And read more to sharpen your toolbox. So obviously, if we want to improve our writing skills, a lot of teachers probably are asking, like, how do I improve my writing skills? You need to read, because if you're reading, you're going to expand your vocabulary. You can vary your writing more. Third one, start with an outline. So you have seen my outline. You can use it, you make it yourself, whatever it is, but encourage your students and yourself to have an outline before you write. Then identify the question and always think about what the thesis statement is before you start writing. So don't just start writing right away. Know what it is. Don't be afraid to ask someone to proofread your writing. So a different pair of eyes will definitely help. And it doesn't mean like they have to have better skills than you. It's they can have similar skills or even lower skills. It doesn't really matter. But have a different person read your text will help you to have a different perspective. Then always make sure to do a word count before submitting your essay. Your grades will automatically be deducted if you write less than what you're supposed to. If, let's say, you're being asked to write minimum 300 words, then write at least 300. Don't write 250 because you will get deducted. Then last one, odd numbers are easier, as I have mentioned, right, to remember than even numbers. So 1, 3, 5, 7, they're easier to remember and they make more sense when it comes to writing. So make sure you have either maybe 3 body paragraphs or 5 body paragraphs. That will be easier that way to organize everything. And I would say for myself, 3 is a magic number. It's not too short, not too long, it's just enough. So the more specific tips, avoid using too many adverbs such as very, because I think a lot of Indonesian people like to use, yes, I like this very much, or this is very hard, very, very. Try to replace them with more fitting words. So look it up online, right? So let's say if you want to write something with the very, let's say very pretty or very beautiful. How do I say that? Is there another word? Gorgeous. Oh, that's right. Okay, I'm gonna write gorgeous. So Miss Nadia is gorgeous instead of very beautiful, for example, right? Or what is it? Something that's it's burning hot instead of it's very hot. You can say that too, right? Whatever it is, make it more interesting that way than just using very, 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 very. Then learn how to paraphrase. This is not something that we just learn one time and we know how to do it right away, but at least learn how to paraphrase and learn how to summarize, learn how to use transitions to make your writing flow better. So the first, then, after that, so on. And since everything is computerized and digitalized, learn how to type faster too, because in the future, everything will be more digitalized, right? So yes, writing on paper is good, but also type is also important because the last thing you want to think about is not being fast enough to write down your ideas you have in your head. Let's say when it comes to writing, then you have only 20 minutes, but you're typing really slowly. You have a lot of typos. You don't want that to happen, right? And typing, I think, has become one of the necessity skills that we should have nowadays for us as teachers as well as for the students. And if you have problems with spelling, that means you need to handwrite more. So don't get used to autocorrection, right? So even for myself, there's one word that I always forget. It's, I think, like occasionally, how many C's are there or how many S are there? So I have to write it down to get used to making sure that I'm not making that mistake. And the last one, writing under time constraint is different than writing at your leisure time. So use stopwatch to time yourself when practicing. So make sure that when you are, if you're going to take a test in the future, that's either it's TOEFL or IELTS, you know it's going to be timed. So get yourself to be timed as well. So you know how long it takes for you to write that kind of essay, because practice makes perfect, right? Obviously. So it can't just be one time and you just know how to do it right away. Because at the end of the day, if you write too long, you're not going to have so much time during the exam itself. And you want to tell your students that as well. Okay, so I think that's pretty much it. This is just a little bit of what Atlas has. So I did mention it earlier, right? So even for elementary teachers, if you're not teaching essays, that's okay. So in our books, we also have tracing. We start from tracing, right? Tracing letters, tracing words, and then turn them into sentences. That's also writing. So, but that is more accuracy based, and that's perfectly fine, because when we're teaching lower grade students, we want to focus on the accuracy more than the communication, because they don't have enough vocabulary yet. It's the same as speaking, for example. If they don't have enough vocabulary, how do you expect them to start speaking right away? So you might have them to read out loud, like Mr. Chen said earlier, right? Same thing with writing. We give them out the tracing words. So they trace first, and then they write it, and then they will turn it into free writing at the end. So give them some support. Okay, I think that's pretty much it from me. Thank you so much, Miss Nadia. I'm gonna give it back to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Kevin, for giving us a very insightful explanation about how writing works, right? Especially Mr. Kevin asked us to do some more writing and then learn more to write. All right. Okay, so I guess I can have one question only for this session, and I can see that Mr. Sultan already is he is already raising his hand. So are you ready for the question, Mr. Sultan?
Yes, okay.
Okay. So Mr. Sultan, the floor
Yeah,
is yours.
thank you for opportunity for me to giving question to Mr. Kevin. Thank you very much for your kinds of your presentation. It's amazing, Mr. Kevin. Yeah, allow me to introduce myself first. My name is Ahmad Sultan, and I'm teaching in a high school in SMA and for Malang. You know that talking about the writing, this is a little bit difficulties for me when I teach my student. Why I say like that? Because you know that the student lacks of the information and ideas. You know, today is the era of browsing. Everything that the student want, just try to browse in the internet, something like that, when we allow the student using mobile phone. So what should we do as a teacher, especially your experience, Mr. Kevin, when teach the student like that? So we cannot deny the student knowing technology more than us, something like that. Thank you.
Okay, so Mr. Kevin, I think you can directly ask, because Mr. Sultan asked about the difficulties he faces in the classroom, please.
Yes, of course. That's a really good question. Thank you so much for asking. So I would actually suggest to teachers not to restrict your students from using technology, because if we are doing that, that means like we're also like cutting down their opportunities, because they need to actually use it in the future as well, right? They need to know technology. But obviously we need to guide them. So for example, if let's say they like researching online, okay, that's good. Okay, but what type of writing are you trying to ask them to do? For example, let's say because you're teaching junior high school, maybe like it's not something that is as long as an academic essay, right? Maybe it's just like, okay, so try to write down some your own opinion. So write your own opinion about maybe what is it called, global warming, for example. Then you can ask them like, okay, so you want to look it up online, that's fine, but don't forget that you need to write it in your own words. So that it's fine. Maybe like at first they will probably try to copy and paste, or they just write down whatever they find. But then at the end, you can understand, because you're the teacher, right? You understand if there's actually their own words or not. And you teach them how to paraphrase. So use that technique, right? That technique of paraphrasing, so they can turn it into their own words. And that is completely fine. But if we're talking about creative writing, that's a totally different story, right? Because creative writing, it refers something from their own mind that they're not researching, it's just from them. Then that's when the brainstorming process takes place. And usually what I like to do is I like to form groups in class. So the students, they can brainstorm together and they can come up with like different topics. Then they will choose which one will do what. So that gives them to get started basically. And I think that's really helpful because a lot of students, they just need a little bit of guidance. It doesn't mean that they don't know how to write it, but to get them started. So that's our role as a teacher, is to get them started, give them some prompts, give them some support, some ideas, and they will be able to know how to do it. But I would say, going back to the question, is it okay if they use technology? It's totally fine. It's totally fine. But the thing is that you need to make sure they're targeted, and then you know like what you're expecting them to do, basically.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Kevin, for the explanation. And Bapak Ibu, we are so sorry that we have to had only one question for today's webinar with Mr. Kevin. Okay, Ibu Febryan, we hope you can join our next webinar. And so, yeah, you could have us more question, right? Okay. You also can, if it is, an urgent question, okay, and you are really curious about it, just try to chat Maya, and perhaps Maya will send that one to Mr. Kevin, and we are going to discuss it. All right. Okay. So Bapak Ibu, thank you so much for today's webinar, and also for your excitement to us. Okay, but it is not the end of our session yet. Okay, Mr. Kevin, thank you so much for joining us. I want you to give big applause to Mr. Kevin. All right. And okay, so Bapak Ibu, yes. I would like to ask Mr. Kevin now. So what is the keyword for today's webinar from you, Mr. Kevin?
My keyword is really easy. It's outline.
Okay, outline. Okay, so why is it outline, Mr. Kevin?
Well, I think because a lot of time when students do not know how to write, it's really helpful to use outlines so they can get started, right? Because the outline is there, there's the introduction, body, so they know like what to fill in before you just give it to them and just write right away. So they need to have the structure first.
All right. So thank you so much, Mr. Kevin. Yeah, that's a really, what is that? Brief closing from you. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so Bapak Ibu, if you're asking the present list, right? This is okay. This is a time for you to get your present list, okay? And then do not forget to fill in the keywords. All right. So by the way, okay, Mr. Kevin and also Mr. Chen already discussed about the help of AI to help our teaching process, right? And then after this, there will be an announcement, right? The announcement will be from the Bimbing. So we are going to share about the competition that the Bimbing and also Samsung will held. Yes, then the competition will be for you and your students. Okay, so the name of the competition is Samsung Solve for Tomorrow. Dan this kompetisi ini topiknya adalah tentang kecerdasan buatan di bidang STEM untuk menciptakan solusi nyata dalam bentuk teknologi. Nah, I think I will give while you are filling the present list, I will give this session to the PIC of the event. There is Mr. Givari. Okay, halo Kak Givari, are you there?
Oke, halo Mbak Nadia, and good afternoon Bapak Ibu semuanya. Salam kenal.
Ya, boleh nih Kak Givari bisa di-share sambil Bapak Ibunya mengisi present list. Kak Givari boleh share apa itu Samsung Solve for Tomorrow. Oke, silakan.
Oke, boleh. Terima kasih banyak Mbak Nadia atas kesempatannya. Pak Kevin juga di sini. Terima kasih banyak sudah diberikan tempat gitu ya untuk mungkin mempromosikan juga sekaligus menginformasikan kepada Bapak Ibu guru gitu ya tentang Samsung Solve for Tomorrow 2024 seperti itu. Nah, mungkin saya izin share screen juga ya, Mbak Nadia, Pak Kevin, dan juga Bapak Ibu semuanya. Oke, baik. Sebelumnya perkenalkan Bapak Ibu, saya Givari. Saya sebetulnya dari dibimbing.id gitu ya. Kalau Bapak Ibu tahu, dibimbing.id merupakan platform pembelajaran sebetulnya. Dan di sini saya mungkin sebagai perwakilan juga dari Samsung Solve for Tomorrow 2024 gitu ya. Karena pada tahun ini dibimbing menjadi mitra operasional Samsung untuk program ini seperti itu. Nah, mungkin saya izin menjelaskan juga apa sih Samsung Solve for Tomorrow. Jadi untuk Samsung Solve for Tomorrow itu merupakan tadi mungkin sudah disebutkan gitu ya sama Mbak Nadia juga. Ini merupakan kesempatan pembelajaran dan juga kontes atau kompetisi gitu ya, di mana teman-teman peserta nantinya bisa menggunakan pengetahuan mereka di bidang STEM, Science, Teknologi, Engineering, dan juga Mathematics untuk menciptakan solusi nyata yang dapat memecahkan masalah sosial di sekitarnya dalam bentuk teknologi berbasis kecerdasan buatan atau AI seperti itu. Nah, seperti yang sudah saya sebutkan juga, di sini nggak cuma kompetisi, tapi ada pembelajarannya. Jadi pada program ini nantinya teman-teman peserta atau Bapak Ibu guru itu akan kita berikan juga nih terkait pembelajaran, terkait kerjasama, serta berpikir kritis dan juga kreatif. Nah, mungkin di sini ada Bapak Ibu guru yang sekolahnya tahun lalu udah sempat ikut gitu ya, Samsung Solve for Tomorrow atau SFT kita sebutnya biasanya. Nah, di tahun 2023 ini sedikit kilas balik, itu kita berhasil mengumpulkan 309 tim, di mana terdiri dari 1087 peserta gitu ya, untuk kategori SMA, SMK, MA, dan juga sederajat seperti itu, dari seluruh Indonesia. Nah, pada tahun ini sebetulnya kita expanding juga kategori lombanya ke perguruan tinggi gitu ya. Cuma nanti udah pasti yang dikompetisikan dipisah gitu ya, yang SMA atau yang sekolah dikompetisikan dengan yang sekolah, yang perguruan tinggi pun akan dikompetisikan atau dilombakan antara yang perguruan tinggi seperti itu. Nah, untuk syarat dan ketentuannya mungkin saya akan jelaskan setelahnya juga. Tapi saya mau menginformasikan juga dan menekankan bahwa kalau lombanya memang yang bisa mengikuti itu teman-teman siswa gitu ya, siswa aktif. Tapi kalau misalkan untuk pembelajarannya, nanti Bapak Ibu juga bisa ikut daftar gitu ya untuk hadir di kelasnya. Nanti akan ada beberapa kelas juga yang kita adakan. Nanti ketika Bapak Ibu daftar, Bapak Ibu bisa ikut kelasnya juga secara gratis dan juga acaranya nanti akan full online seperti itu. Nah, mungkin di sini saya izin menjelaskan temanya juga gitu ya dari Samsung Solve for Tomorrow karena kita harapannya adalah menciptakan generasi-generasi penerus bangsa yang melek digital juga gitu ya dan juga generasi AI seperti itu. Jadi untuk temanya nantinya teman-teman peserta itu bisa mengangkat atau mengambil permasalahan gitu ya yang ada di sekitar mereka dari 3 tema ini. Yang pertama ada pendidikan dan pembelajaran, keberlanjutan dan lingkungan, dan juga kesehatan serta kesejahteraan gitu. Nantinya permasalahan-permasalahan yang teman-teman peserta temukan itu bisa teman-teman ajukan ide solusinya gitu ya, yang nantinya selama program ini teman-teman akan kembangkan juga menjadi sebuah prototype di mana di dalamnya juga terdapat AI-nya gitu ya atau kecerdasan buatan seperti itu. Nah, setelah tema di sini kemudian tentunya ada syarat dan ketentuannya juga ya Bapak Ibu. Mungkin di sini yang pertama udah pasti harus berstatus sebagai warga negara Indonesia. Kemudian ini kompetisinya adalah tim gitu ya, di mana nantinya satu tim dapat beranggotakan 2 sampai 4 orang dan berasal dari sekolah yang sama. Jadi kalau misalkan sekolah sama, kelasnya berbeda, itu nggak masalah juga seperti itu. Nah, kemudian di sini setiap tim sebenarnya yang lolos maksimal akan ada 3 tim gitu ya. Tapi kalau misalkan dari Bapak Ibu guru dari setiap sekolahnya mau mengirimkan lebih dari 3 tim karena antusiasnya banyak, itu boleh juga nggak apa-apa didaftarkan aja karena nanti ada babak penyisihan juga gitu ya. Dan nanti insya Allah yang daftar itu tetap bisa ikut kelas yang pertama gitu. Kelasnya apa nanti saya jelaskan juga. Nah, di sini yang keempat untuk kategori SMK, SMA, dan MA atau sederajat itu wajib didampingi oleh satu guru pendamping gitu ya, di mana satu guru pendamping bisa mewakili 3 tim dari sekolah yang sama tentunya gitu. Nah, yang kelima di sini adalah kebutuhan pendaftaran sebenarnya. Nanti ketika pendaftaran, kalau yang dilakukan Bapak Ibu guru dosen itu pendaftaran nggak perlu submit nomor 5 ini. Tapi buat teman-teman peserta nantinya akan ada beberapa data diri dan juga dokumen gitu ya yang diupload. di mana di sini ada surat pernyataan partisipasi dan konten, surat pernyataan originalitas, sama proposal ide atau konsep paper seperti itu. Gitu. Nah, di sini pastinya setiap peserta juga wajib mengikuti program sesuai dengan aturan dan juga waktu yang telah ditentukan. Nah, untuk waktunya itu kita karena memang belum launching gitu ya Bapak Ibu, karena kita sekarang masih aktif di sosialisasi, waktunya nanti berkisarnya adalah di bulan Mei ini sampai di bulan Oktober nanti gitu ya untuk periode kompetisinya seperti itu. Nah, kemudian kenapa sih harus daftar? Kenapa sih harus ikut? Di sini yang pertama, nantinya akan ada hadiah produk Samsung dengan total ratusan juta rupiah untuk setiap kategorinya gitu ya. Nah, untuk nomor satu ini sebenarnya hadiahnya nanti untuk para pemenang. Tapi ketika periode pendaftaran nantinya Bapak Ibu guru maupun teman-teman peserta akan diminta untuk upload Twibbon juga di media sosial. Dan itu nanti ada hadiahnya juga gitu ya. Untuk Twibbon Activation sama foto competition gitu. Dan hadiahnya mungkin aku spill aja di sini juga nanti berupa handphone Samsung gitu ya. Nah, yang kedua di sini selain kompetisi tadi sudah saya mention juga bahwa Bapak Ibu guru dan teman-teman peserta nantinya akan mendapatkan pembelajaran. Di sini pembelajarannya ada terkait design thinking, terus nanti akan ada mentoring juga selama pengembangan prototipenya dan juga nanti akan ada ekstra kelas terkait AI juga seperti itu. Yang ketiga di sini ada sertifikat kompetisi dan juga pembelajaran tentunya. Kemudian di sini yang keempat Bapak Ibu guru juga dapat akses ke LMS gitu ya untuk akses materi-materi dan juga recording kelasnya nanti. Dan yang kelima pastinya karena nanti akan ada mentor-mentor terus bergabung juga dengan pendamping lain gitu ya di kelas, pastinya nanti akan bisa mendapatkan relasi serta pengalaman baru gitu ya dalam bidang pengembangan prototipe berbasis AI. Seperti itu. Nah, kemudian di sini mungkin saya izin jelaskan program journey-nya secara overview gitu ya. Di mana yang pertama di sini ada 3 babak, ada babak penyisihan, babak semifinal, dan juga babak final. Di babak penyisihan ini nantinya ketika pendaftaran, kalau misalkan teman-teman peserta emang harus submit beberapa dokumen yang saya sebutkan tadi gitu ya, untuk kita cek administrasinya. Untuk nanti kemudian kalau misalkan sudah lolos, itu bisa masuk ke design thinking workshop gitu ya, bisa ikut kelasnya. Nah, tapi kalau untuk Bapak Ibu guru dosen cukup daftar aja. Nanti linknya ada untuk daftar dan kemudian nanti bisa kita masukkan ke grup juga untuk kita informasikan terkait kelas-kelas yang ada seperti itu dan nanti bisa bergabung juga. Nah, kemudian nantinya setelah babak penyisihan, teman-teman setelah ikut design thinking workshop ini akan diminta untuk menyempurnakan proposal idenya dulu. Kemudian proposal ide tersebut akan kita akses gitu ya, akan kita nilai untuk kemudian kita pertimbangkan untuk lolos nggak nih ke babak semifinal. Di mana untuk babak semifinal ini tuh yang lolos hanya 40 sekolah, 40 tim, sorry, 40 tim dari sekolah dan juga 40 tim dari perguruan tinggi. Di sini di babak semifinal ini nantinya teman-teman peserta akan diminta untuk mengembangkan ide solusi tadi gitu ya, menyempurnakan lagi ke dalam bentuk prototype dan dipandu juga oleh mentor seperti itu. Dimana untuk mentoringnya sendiri ini kita kasih 4 kali mentoring wajib gitu ya, dan juga 4 kali mentoring additional. Dimana untuk mentoring wajib itu nanti akan kita tentukan jadwalnya, dan untuk mentoring additional itu setiap kelompok nantinya bisa melakukan ini ya, janjian gitu sama mentornya. Kira-kira kapan enaknya untuk diskusi terkait prototipe yang sedang mereka kembangkan gitu. Nantinya setelah selesai teman-teman juga akan diminta lagi untuk submit dalam bentuk final paper dan juga video pitching gitu ya. Gitu. Setelah teman-teman submit, nanti kita akan berikan ekstra kelas juga terkait AI for Designer gitu ya. Selama sebanyak 2 kelas, 2 sesi gitu ya. Dimana masing-masing sesinya untuk setiap kelasnya masing-masing sesinya itu di 2,5 jam gitu. Nah, setelah nanti teman-teman submit final paper dan juga video pitching, kita akan seleksi lagi gitu ya untuk mempertimbangkan apakah teman-teman masuk ke babak final atau enggak. Di mana di babak final ini nantinya ada 15 tim dari sekolah dan juga 15 tim dari perguruan tinggi yang lolos. Dan untuk tim-tim yang lolos, video pitching tadi akan kita upload gitu ya di sosial media untuk bisa diakses oleh publik. Sehingga nanti publik bisa vote nih, bisa nge-like ide-ide mana yang memang bagus. Kemudian nanti akan namanya kita pilih sebagai PCA winner atau People Choice Award. Seperti itu. Dan nanti tim-tim yang lolos ke babak final itu penentuan pemenangnya adalah dari presentasi yang dilakukan oleh tim-tim yang masuk ke babak final. Seperti itu. Presentasinya juga dilakukan secara online by Zoom gitu ya Bapak Ibu. Jadi semuanya gratis dan juga full online. Dan nanti setelah presentasi kita mendapatkan nilainya 3 terbaik dari tiap kategori, baik itu sekolah maupun perguruan tinggi, masing-masing akan ada pemenang juara 1, 2, dan juga 3, dan juga 1 People Choice Award gitu ya. Mungkin aku sedikit spill jumlah hadiahnya juga ya Bapak Ibu. Untuk juara 1 itu kurang lebih di angka 170 juta rupiah dalam bentuk produk Samsung gitu ya. Untuk juara 2-nya kurang lebih 100 juta rupiah, dan juara 3-nya itu kalau nggak salah 75 juta rupiah gitu. Dan untuk People Choice Award-nya itu di angka 23 juta rupiah kurang lebih. Seperti itu. Nah, setelah program Journey mungkin aku sedikit jelaskan terkait kelas-kelas yang mau nanti akan ada juga gitu ya. Yang pertama di sini ada Design Thinking Workshop, di mana untuk Design Thinking Workshop-nya ini nanti akan ada sejumlah 4 sesi gitu ya yang akan dilakukan di setiap hari Sabtu. Untuk jadwalnya nanti akan menyusul diinformasikan juga. Tapi yang jelas di sini selain kelas Design Thinking Workshop, kita akan jelaskan gimana sih Design Thinking ini bisa membantu dalam aktivitas kita sehari-hari, nggak cuma bikin prototype aja, tapi bisa membantu aktivitas kita dalam sehari-hari juga. Dan tentunya di sini kita akan utilize atau memanfaatkan tools-tools yang sekarang memang sering digunakan terkait design thinking ini gitu ya. Di sini ada Figma, ChatGPT, Gemini, dan juga Maze. Mungkin untuk tools-tools AI-nya beberapa Bapak Ibu guru sudah familiar juga gitu ya. Seperti itu. Nah, kemudian selain design thinking workshop, tadi untuk mentoring ini sama akan dilaksanakan juga di setiap hari Sabtu. Yang wajibnya itu ada 4, dan nanti kita kasih kesempatan buat teman-teman peserta itu ada 4 kali additional juga untuk melakukan mentoring tambahan seperti itu. Dan yang terakhir di sini ada ekstra kelasnya gitu ya, AI for Designer. Kita akan berikan juga materi terkait penggunaan AI untuk prototype desain gitu ya, baik itu hardware maupun software juga. Di sini nanti akan ada 2 sesi kelas setiap Sabtu juga yang akan berjalan kurang lebih 150 menit per sesinya. Di sini mungkin ada tools-tools yang berbeda seperti yang tadi sudah dijelaskan di design thinking gitu ya. Di sini ada tools Midjourney dan juga Wizard. Di sini toolsnya banyak digunakan sebenarnya untuk pembuatan gambar atau misalkan wireframe, mockup, dan juga mungkin desain-desain prototype dari website ataupun aplikasi seperti itu ya. Seperti itu kurang lebih. Nah, mungkin seperti itu aja sosialisasi dariku gitu ya terkait Samsung Solve for Tomorrow. Kalau misalkan dari Bapak Ibu tertarik, dan juga mungkin boleh banget nih di-share ke kalau misalkan di sini di setiap sekolah ada PIC-PIC-nya terkait yang suka ikut-ikut lomba gitu ya, atau mau di-share ke grup guru-guru supaya daftar untuk ikut pembelajarannya, itu boleh juga gitu ya Bapak Ibu. Dan juga di sini mungkin boleh juga Bapak Ibu nge-scan barcode-nya atau klik link-nya gitu ya yang sudah saya kirimkan. Saya izin kirim ya Mbak Nadia di kolom chat.
Boleh, Mas, silakan. Ini sudah ada
Buat-
beberapa guru juga yang menanyakan ke saya, mau minta slide-nya gitu ya.
Boleh.
Oke, anyway, Bapak Ibu, we are going to explain about this competition and later because we are going to have a session gitu ya, Mas Givari ya. Nanti
Betul.
sesinya akan bahas tentang AI in education gitu. So, fun fact, Mas Givari, Atlas also has one nih, gitu, AI di dalam online learning-nya. Nah, nanti tuh we are going to also discuss about this competition and also AI in Atlas next week ya Mas Givari ya.
Yes, betul Mbak Nadia.
Tuh, nah jadi Bapak Ibu dinantikan saja informasi selanjutnya. Nah ini Mas Givari akan nge-share linknya dulu nih, silahkan. Nah dari go sudah ada. Oke, sip sip sip. Alright, so Mas Givari, is there anything else that you want to talk dan you want to say
Oke.
or share?
Oke, I think that's enough Mbak Nadia.
Oke,
Dari aku
siap.
karena udah sore juga ya, mungkin
Oke,
Bapak Ibu
oke.
guru udah mau pulang. Paling
Siap.
mungkin boleh di-save juga nggak apa-apa linknya, dan mungkin bisa bergabung juga ke grup, karena nanti sebelum kita share di sosial media, di grup ini Bapak Ibu guru juga akan mendapatkan informasi terbaru gitu terkait program SFT-nya. Kita juga nanti akan ada secara rutin gitu ya sosialisasi selama periode pendaftaran. Jadi Bapak Ibu guru bisa ajak mungkin siswa-siswanya atau Bapak Ibu guru lainnya untuk bergabung gitu ya untuk menyimak lebih detail gitu ya terkait SFT 2024 ini. Mungkin itu aja Mbak Nadia. Sekali lagi terima kasih banyak untuk tempat sosialisasinya sudah diberikan kesempatan. Terima kasih banyak juga Pak Kevin ya sudah diberikan kesempatan.
Thank you,
Yes, aku
Mas
kembalikan ke
Givari.
Mbak
Okay,
Nadia. Aku izin
so
stop share juga.
yes, thank you. Let's have a photo group, everyone. Yes, Mr. Chen, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being still with us. Okay, I know. Yeah. Okay, that's already late, but that's okay. We're having fun, right? Okay. All right. So it is time for opening up your camera. Also for Mr. Kevin and the Bimbing team, Mas Givari, you also can join us. Okay. So I will count on 3, 2, 1. Say cheese. Okay, good. So that's on our first slide. I will go to the second one. 3, 2, 1, go. All right. I think that's enough, right? Okay, so Bapak Ibu, if you are asking about the certificate, do not worry, we are going to give you the certificate if you fill in our press release. So make sure you are, make sure you have fill in the link, okay? And we would like to say thank you so much to Mr. Chen and also Mr. Kevin. Yeah, we are going to also say bye-bye to you, okay? And then thank you for being with us, and we are going to go with you again later, right? Okay, so thank you Bapak Ibu semuanya. Alright.
Jadi guru itu harus esa sabar. Tidak jarang murid mengalami kesulitan, namun tidak berani bertanya.
Kadang capek dan bosan. Setiap sebelum ngajar harus buat dan update lesson plan. Ditambah lagi kemampuan dan kebutuhan siswa itu berbeda-beda. Harus ditanya satu persatu di mana permasalahannya. Tapi setelah saya mencoba pakai Atlas, motivasi belajar murid saya meningkat tajam. Karena selain memiliki buku interaktif dan LMS yang user-friendly, metode pembelajarannya juga menarik dan mudah dimengerti. Lalu saya merekomendasikan ke teman guru bahasa Inggris yang lain.
Atlas memang merupakan solusi yang selama ini saya cari. Kini, murid saya jadi jago berbahasa Inggris karena terus belajar dan praktek dengan video pembelajaran bahasa Inggris di rumah.
Syukur sekarang ada Atlas. Banyak pilihan metode ajar dan media pembelajaran up to date. Tanpa kursus, guru tenang, murid senang.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Perkenalkan, nama saya Nur Afrima dari SMP Model Ariat Insan Cendekia Bekasi. Di sini saya mengajar bahasa Inggris. Kesan pertama menggunakan LMS Atlas. Sangat penasaran dengan isi dari materi-materi yang diberikan oleh tim Atlas dan juga tentang worksheet-nya terlebih itu. Karena ketika menggunakan LMS Atlas ini tidak hanya materi yang mudah dipahami oleh para siswa, tetapi juga memudahkan kita sebagai teachers terkait tentang resort-resort di skill listening seperti itu. Kesan positif dari anak-anak pun juga saya dapatkan ketika mereka menggunakan LMS Atlas maupun buku dari tim Atlas sendiri. Anak-anak menyampaikan bahwasanya bukunya itu sangat menarik karena banyak gambar, banyak video-video yang nanti bisa mereka putar di LMS-nya. Jadi ketika anak-anak belum paham materi-materinya di sekolah, ketika kita berdiskusi bersama dari penyampaian materi dari saya sebagai guru bahasa Inggrisnya, mereka bisa mempelajari kembali dari LMS di rumah masing-masing. Seperti itu. Overall dari saya untuk Atlas, LMS-nya memang good job.
Okay, Bapak Ibu, we are about to end the meeting. Thank you so much. See you on next week for another webinar. Bye-bye. Wassalamualaikum.